Hello, KCIW listeners, and welcome to Curry Café, where we put together a panel of volunteers and guests who discuss various topics from whimsical and fun to more serious subjects.
Well, hello again. My name is Ray Gary, and welcome to the Curry Café. As Rick said, we talk about whimsical and serious stuff, and I'm not sure which direction that's going to take today. But we have put together a panel. He doesn't usually say that we painstakingly search out the community to find the best people to be on this show. So we'll have everybody just introduce themselves as we've traditionally done.
All right. I'm Shirley Hyatt.
And I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. I was just going to say I don't usually go ahead with a spiel. I have a couple of shows that you probably listen to, Stardust and mostly Bluegrass. Over to you, Robin.
Robin Renee, and I have no spiel.
No spiel.
No spiel.
All right.
I'm Robert O'Sullivan. I've lived in Brookings since 2015.
And evidently it's modesty that keeps him from talking about his new YouTube program that plays regularly. What's it called?
Well, I have two channels, one Robert H. O'Sullivan, and a lot of it is on politics, quite a bit is on the St. Tim's controversy. And the one Alice Wildermuth O'Sullivan contains music of all sorts, religious music, swing music, lots of different things. And she was very gifted. She sometimes would play a very fast piece like Bolero with playing one hand on the piano and the other hand on a glockenspiel type instrument. And I can't rub my tummy and do whatever you're supposed to do with the head at the same time. So
Pat your head. Go ahead.
Pat your head.
Yeah,
I feel too restrained right here to get into that.
I've always thought the people that played the piano, it was amazing they could do two things at the same time on the piano.
Yeah.
Most instruments you don't do that, right?
Well, there's actually video of her doing that, so you can see her do it. And on really fast pieces, Malagueña. And,
well, we'll have to check that out.
Indeed.
So before we get into today's subject, I have a little, I don't know if it's an editorial comment or just pointing something out. A couple of weeks ago, we did a show here at the Curry Café about the presidential transition, I think it was. And our engineer here at KCIW took that program and plugged it into a Google AI program, I'm not sure exactly what it's called, where he sent them the information and they could turn it into a transcript or turn it into the people actually evaluating the show. And when he sent it to me, I thought, oh boy, we're famous because it had all these two very intelligent people discussing our show, not only quoting it, but expressing their opinions on our opinions. And it was very, very good. And I'm thinking to myself, who are these people? And it wasn't until about halfway through I happened to look at the introduction again when it said AI. What our engineer did is he just plugged it into this program and they sent this out. It's absolutely perfect. You would not ever think that it was computers doing it, and I'm still shocked by it. that we've come to that point.
No, it's terrifying. People think it's so great and they're so happy to have it, and I just think it's going to create a lot of abuse in so many ways. Really.
Yeah. Well, you could have anybody saying anything.
Yeah.
You know, we any of us that watch YouTube, probably most of those things on YouTube are computer voices, and 5 minutes into it, they pronounce something incorrectly or something like that, and you realize that it is a computer voice, even though the voice is very good. But there was none of that in this. You would never spot it in a second. Now, coincidentally, last night on Netflix, I watched a movie that you would think I knew the name of since I'm going to talk about it, but I don't. I think it was called Fear, and it was about this family that gets this super AI thing in their home, and before the end of the show, it's taken over their lives. It's taken people's lives. It's just it's supposed to be just in the living room like Alexis, But no, it's on all their computers. It's on the car radio. It's on everything.
Yeah, we're headed there.
Offering suggestions of what they should be doing and shouldn't be doing. The one woman hadn't completed her doctorate thesis, and this was going to do it for her. So that's not so far-fetched now, I think.
Well, you remember in the movie of 2001, Hal. Oh, Hal. Hal is going to take over and do his thing.
Yeah, well, this thing would tell Hal to shut up.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they thought would be happening around, 25 years ago or whatever. No, that kind of thing is terrifying. My brother sent me a story. He said, I fed this information about our grandfather and some incidents that happened with him. I fed it into the AI program, and they wrote a poem. I was hornswoggled. I mean, it was a great poem. And it's like, wait a minute, what happens to the creative voice? People like me who are actively writing, what happens when you're no longer necessary? You just push a button and some AI will happen. I really have trepidatious feelings about that. I'm
terrified by it. You could probably throw your violin in the garbage now. I mean, anybody could not only play your violin, but write a song, a whole new thing.
Yeah. People are going to be obsolete, don't you think?
I was shocked when about a year ago I happened to look at Photoshop. I was going to get back into photography, and I sort of brought up Photoshop to see what was going on. And so they have this AI program where you bring the picture up, and then you push a button that says select subject, and it will figure out what the subject you want to select is, a person or this. And if it's not enough, you can expand subject, and that might get other somethings in there. And then if you push another button that says select, and it takes a couple of minutes, and the subject is outlined. It is taken out, and then you can do whatever you want with that subject. Put this person in a wedding dress, and it will put the person in a wedding dress.
It'll scare her boyfriend.
And you can change it. You can put a tiara on, or change the style of the wedding dress, or have her in a wedding dress on the Amazon River.
Dear.
And I said, well, I don't see any point in getting back into photography now if you don't need to actually take a picture. Think of the people who run venues where you do wedding photography stuff. They're in a business.
Don't give up, though, because I think it behooves all of us to continue to not be sucked into this kind of thing where, we're still here. We're still individuals. We still have our particular slant in our voice, etc. And there's a photography group here in town, and they do some wonderful, wonderful stuff.
I was part of that for a while.
Yeah. So I hope that doesn't take over our lives. It's bad enough that we've lost
The kind of
control over
photography, I did wildlife photography, so that was not really useful to me at all, except that I have a hummingbird feeder out in front of the house, and nobody wants a picture of a hummingbird feeding at the feeder.
Yes, they do.
No, you want it on some flower. So I just selected the feeder and changed it to a flower, and now the hummingbird's on a flower.
Cheater.
Pumpkin eater.
Anyway.
I suppose that's considered to be creative.
Okay.
All right, then.
We have a real subject for today, I guess. Somebody come up with the idea that we needed to address I don't know if you call it a problem, or the situation of people living alone, sometimes by choice, sometimes by circumstance. And some people are happy with it, and some people are not so happy with it, and some people like me are pretty well adjusted to it.
Well,
Anybody have?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm a single by choice person. I really do like living alone. And for most of my living alone time, I've had the companionship of a cat. Right now I don't. But I think one of the reasons it works well for me is because I'm active in many ways. And I think music and art, I'm also a writer besides being a musician. Those things they belong to us. They are our individual things that we do. And if you have some skill or talent or interests, those things you carry with you no matter where you are. So being alone by choice, then it's up to me if I want to have company or go someplace. So personally, I enjoy it.
I agree with you, Shirley. I'm single by choice. I've been single for about 20 years, and I have not been without an animal for more than 2 weeks at a time. And I thoroughly don't know what I would do without animals. I mean, they are my companions. They are my company. I enjoy them very, very much. I'm not lonely. When I have interests, I take them with me whenever I can. I travel with them, and I just thoroughly enjoy it.
Good.
That's me.
Bob?
I guess I should have something to say.
Somebody's got to have something to say other than, hey, I'm just fine. Have like that.
I don't think I'm just fine.
Okay, good. Let's
but,
get some controversy in there.
I was married for 51 years to a very talented woman. She was both a lawyer and a musician, and in her retirement became an artist as well, a watercolorist. And she died during the early days of COVID, not from COVID, but from various things. And I found myself much more alone than I ever thought I would be. We were pretty new to Brookings. We had lived here 4 or 5 years, and it takes a while to get roots and make friends and all of that. And it was a time when the vaccine was not yet developed, and I felt extremely alone for quite a while. I did have the company of 3 German Shepherds at the time. Wow. Now I have 2. And they were very, very helpful, but it was quite a switch in life from being really, day in and day out for 50 plus years, being involved with another person, and then suddenly she wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so I did experience some loneliness, and I don't know if I'd like to be partnered again. I think it's highly unlikely, but that's where I find myself now.
Well, I think that if you are really looking for activities and situations where you can have a companionship of a sort, then there's plenty out there to partake of. Mm-hmm. Artists in this community, there are a great number of artists, and they are in a lot of different fields. And if you come out to the second Saturday Art Walk, then you'll see some of these people. And I highly recommend if you don't even think you know how to draw, take a class, come and be with other people who don't know what they're doing either. It's the idea of doing something that you're interested in and meeting other people who are interested in the same thing. And so there's that connection there. So I think that I highly recommend that. And there are walking groups and hiking groups and all kinds of stuff. And people get together and listen to each other perform 2 or 3 songs at the Chetco Brewery and other places. So, there's an awful lot going on in this community. There's the activity center also. And so if you choose to do something, there's plenty here to do. And just walking on the beach, is uplifting, makes you feel good.
Shirley mentioned something that I do a lot on the open mic on Thursday at the Chetco Brewery. They have it in the big room there, and you just walk in and sit down. You don't have to pay anything to get there, and the musicians don't even take tips. And and the entertainment will run from, well, that was okay, to, wow, that was great. As there's always a surprise there, and a lot of the same people there each time as far as the audience goes, but you're always running into people who that you get to sit and talk to.
It's kind of become a community of people who do that every week.
Yeah, it's to some extent the same people, but there are others who show up and other entertainers who show up.
Well, there's also a lot of people here who are into the healing arts in various ways. And those are other groups. Like, I don't particularly enjoy going to the beach and drumming, but a lot of people do. And that's certainly available. There's an awful lot of yoga classes. And I think if you keep your mind going, put together puzzles, do crossword puzzles, read things, write things, just being self-expressive, then being older and alone doesn't have to be a lonely spot. It can be very much so, but I'm just saying there are a lot of ways in which to enrich yourself when you are single and don't want to be with anybody in particular.
And there's always YouTube.
Oh, there you go.
You can sit and watch YouTube, or I can. Anything I'm interested in and a lot of things I'm not interested in. And you never know what you're going to come across.
Oh, dear. I guess that's how it is, isn't it?
You start on a subject, they get that subject figured out, and you'll get sent all sorts of stuff.
You know what I say?
And it's all true.
You know what I say?
It has to be true.
Hooray for
It has to be
radio.
true if it's on YouTube. That's the rule.
I'm glad there's radio.
There's also a lot of classes available at the college just up the road.
Right.
I'm signed up for sign language, American Sign Language,
Oh, good for you.
just to have something to do, and found it really fascinating and enjoying it very much. So there's a lot of classes in there you don't have to do for credit. Just go and do it.
Yeah.
It's affordable.
And there are two different kinds of sign language. One, you're actually doing letters, and the other, you have like something means car or something like that.
American Sign Language is not based on sentence structure like we have in English. In English, it would be, for example, I am going to the store. And in American Sign, you'd have signs for I go store. And you assume the rest of it.
Uh-huh.
And then there's C sign, which I don't know anything about C sign other than it's not American Sign Language. And sign language is different in each country. That's American Sign Language is here.
That's kind of
Yeah, it's different in each country. Each country is its own language. And
that kind of takes away some of the usefulness, doesn't it?
no,
I mean, if you could go to Germany and speak the same sign language as somebody in Germany.
Well, it just makes sense. English is not their primary language.
But if you had a sign language that was universal.
A universal sign language. I think there is such a thing like SOS.
I was in a train station in Europe one time, and there was a couple there having an argument in sign language. That was kind of interesting.
Did it ever come to blows?
I don't know. It didn't. Not while I was watching anyway. But hands were flying, I tell you.
it's interesting. But it's very, very difficult to read, for example, when there is closed captioning on television. It goes way too fast. Way too fast. You have to practice. And finger spelling is what you were talking about when you actually use the letters. So when there is no sign in American Sign Language, you finger spell it out. And the alphabet is the alphabet. But they have signs for most everything. And there's a lot of universal signs, like the sign for the telephone. When you hold up your finger to your ear, everybody knows you're on the phone.
We all know that one.
Yeah.
Is there a large group of people in the area who are well served by this, being able to do signing?
I do believe that there is a larger deaf community in Crescent City than here, but there is a deaf community here, and it really is a fascinating study.
I'll bet.
Another way to communicate. It's another language. I find an interest in it.
So do you have deaf people in your class?
No.
No.
No. Well, there is one lady that's hard of hearing, and she basically learns C sign, which if you're American Sign Language, you don't understand it because it's different, very different. It's like a different language. And so she's learning American Sign Language, and I can see the differences between when she does something in C sign. I don't understand it, but if she was to do it in ASL, I would.
I guess you're probably aware that there are many people in the deaf community who feel that people should mind their own business when it comes to restoring their hearing. They have their own community, they communicate well, and they're just happy the way they are, and they...
And they should be.
Yeah.
You know, it is what it is. You have what you have. It's not, I think more of the controversy comes in if there are hearing parents, for example, and they have a deaf child. And they will do everything in their power, in their mind, to have that child hearing as they are. But then there are people in the deaf community that just say, well, teach them American Sign, and that's a way to communicate, and you don't need to have the cochlear implants, or it's all a matter of personal choice.
But your hearing is so much more than communicating. I mean,
It
there's
is.
communicating, but there's also, I don't know.
You're wondering how you're going to listen to your favorite shows, right? The 50s music, etc., right?
Yeah, I could get by with my subtitles on television, unless it's Spanish or Italian, because they talk way faster than I can read.
Well, now that we're on that subject, though, I do think that everything is vibration, and especially when we're talking about music, then there are people who are not hearing, but they can also produce music, which is really interesting.
It is
Because of
fascinating.
Yeah.
When I lived in Northern California, I was part of the ballroom dance community. And there was a gentleman who was hearing when he was born, and there was an accident, and for whatever reason, he's now non-hearing. And he would go listen to music all the time because he could feel it through the floor.
Exactly.
And he would dance, and he was a good dancer. He could feel it through the floor. So
I've sometimes thought about what it would be like to be in my circumstances now 50, 60 years ago. And in many ways, it's a lot better. For one thing, if you have a creative streak in you, there are ways in which you can be your own producer, editor, and put it out there for people to respond to or ignore, whatever. It's the old time in which you had to find someone to work as your communicator with publishers and all that. It's very different now. And there's also an extraordinarily broad range of stimuli, of a television sense, of a radio sense, of other communications that are readily open to me. If on Judgment Day one were to be asked how many newspapers have you read over your lifetime, I'd be in deep trouble. Excuse the language. I was in jobs in politics and media that it was part of the job kind of to read the LA Times and the Washington Post and the New York Times and so forth. And but now you can get all of those on tablets and laptops and other digital means and your phones, and it keeps one stimulated. It finds places where one can communicate oneself, and it's a very different world. And even though with all the craziness of that different world of people putting up outrageous things, and a lot of people don't have the sense to evaluate or make it out before they accepted it, that's part of what happens because the world's so different. But there are some ways in which the way in which the world is different is highly susceptible to a life that's stimulating and creative, while one could easily be bored and depressed.
Do you have some inside information on whether or not that would be a question you might be asked on Judgment Day?
Well, I hope not. I can say I reformed. I went digital, but I did kill a lot of trees in my lifetime. And the LA Times in California used to be especially ridiculous because every time they sold a newspaper, even if they were selling it in the San Francisco area, there was this enormous amount of ads, ad sections, not just ads within the regular editorial content. And every time I got a paper, I was throwing out a bunch of poor trees that had a terrible plight to end up being just printed upon and wasted.
I used to work in the circulation department for a newspaper in New York, and that was always the big complaint about our paper, is that it was almost all ads. Well, that's what kept the paper alive. That paid my salary, and a lot of people go to the ads right away. They want to find out if there's a sale on mattresses someplace. Or
Well, now they can find out differently.
Yes, well, now that's why we don't have as many newspapers as we used to have.
But, I really hope that we don't just toss out everything in favor of the whole world. Our whole world is down to watching a device. And, I know what you're saying about all the trees that got cut down, but when I lived in New York, getting the Sunday New York Times, I mean, that was just like, wow, that was a big event. And the magazine section and the crossword puzzle, and generally, I think we'll never, I hope, never stop producing special kinds of magazines and newspapers. But in the day-to-day world, we don't rely on it. We just turn on the TV or look at our phone. I don't have one, but at any rate, to see what's happening.
Did you hear that?
The
First person I've met in a long time who didn't have a phone.
I don't want one.
Okay.
I know that I'll end up with one because my daughter will insist that I have one. But the thing is, we don't have any privacy left anymore at all. And we're just, give me another one of these devices that somebody can track me. It's just, seems to me, we're running headlong into that like it's a good thing. And I don't think it is.
Well, it probably saves a lot of those trees we were talking about.
Well, yes, we do have that. But what about?
But it also eliminates jobs for those people who cut the trees down.
That's right. But think of getting a job in AI. That would be more fun, wouldn't it?
Not for me.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting world. It really is, and it's scary to me.
For sure.
And this is going to sound terrible, but I'll say it anyway. I really do feel sorry for a lot of young people who are wanting to raise a family in this environment because it's so haywire, in my judgment, now.
And the economics is so haywire.
Oh, the economics. I mean, how are you gonna have a decent place to live unless you're making a ton of money?
And get the kids to the soccer practice.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, we got ourselves to soccer practice. Mom didn't have to drive me. I had a bicycle, and I didn't play soccer, but I did play baseball. And it's a whole strange new thing.
You didn't drive your daughter to ballet, in other words. No, it's a very, very interesting world, and sometimes it makes me wonder, where are we going to end up? Maybe I'll die before the worst happens. That's a pleasant thought, huh?
Yeah, if you look at YouTube every now and then, you can find one, Life in the 1950s, or even the Community. I dig one out every now and then, Life on Long Island in the 1950s, and I remember seeing some of the stuff that they had there.
Yeah, it was great.
It's gone. That's not happening no more.
And we did it to ourselves.
Yep.
Well, just think of the kids nowadays that, any of the school kids. We grew up, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have TV. We didn't have a lot of things that they take for granted now.
We had to pick the phone up and talk to the operator.
Early lines.
I'm trying to remember. I think when we first moved to Long Island, we didn't even have a dial on the phone, but maybe we did. And I know if we wanted to call Brooklyn, which was 35 miles away, we had to go through the operator and do long distance.
Well, and remember when you didn't make a call because you were going to wait until it was the cheaper rate later on in the evening?
Or until the other people on the party line.
Yeah.
And
Solitude has sometimes been part of a kind of religious discipline. There were monks who deliberately lived in solitude, some that didn't talk for 23 hours a day, some even less. And it's also a time in which people read poetry or just contemplate nature or engage in meditation, whatever is their way of dealing with solitude that doesn't necessarily involve other live human beings at the time. And all of that can be helpful and in one sense of oneself and one sense of one's role and how one lives the days that we still have on this earth together.
Can you explain the I can't think of the word, but the reason why the monks chose to be silent? What was the whole story there? I don't get it.
Well, I don't think I can quite accurately tell the whole story, other than in many religious traditions, solitude is in contemplation and meditation is a large part of whatever the religion or spiritual discipline or whatever you want to call it is. And it's just in some ways to quiet the mind. And in many traditions, it's an attempt to be open to communications from the divine or communicating to the divine. And in early Christianity, especially the first few centuries, and especially in Egypt, there's a whole movement known as the Desert Fathers, and they were involved in just the type of activities I was telling about. A lot of silence, a lot of praying, a lot of being alone in one's monastic sort of discipline.
But that's under an umbrella of a sort, you know.
Of a faith, of a tradition, I guess you would call it, yeah.
Yeah, and specifically, as you say, primarily, it's a religious thing. But you did bring up something that I think is vitally important, especially for people as we grow older, and that is to know who we are, you know, to really have the ability to look inside of ourselves and to discover, you know, where our place in society is, certainly, but just to find out who we are, you know, so that we're happier with ourselves and we don't blame other people if we're not happy, or we think we have to go and do something in order to create some form of happiness. So I think a meditative state, so to speak, that really says, you know, this is me, and I have all these capacities, and I can use them or not. But to be acquainted with oneself, I think, is kind of the same thing as what you're saying. You know, you find that divine spark in yourself, or you come to peace with yourself to know who you are.
And I found, you know, I've outlived most of my good friends, and that just happens. But also, there's a real difference between, and I hope I don't sound like J.D. Vance, but
oh dear,
people who have children and those who don't, couples or partners, whatever. The whole experience of life is largely related to that, because as many people grow older, their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren are almost the center of their lives.
Yeah.
But if you have none of those, or if you have pets instead, which in my wife's and my case, we were not childless by choice, it was sort of medical necessity. But the aloneness thing is pretty tricky if you don't have your own children.
Well, and there are a lot of people, as you sort of were talking about, who rely on their children to produce children for them, sort of. It's like, I'm waiting for my grandchildren to show, you know, it's like, wait a minute, is this really about you? Or, you know, but that extended family, that idea of being family, I have just one daughter, and I told her that I was not having any other children, and that if she wanted to create family in a way, it would be through her friends, because there would not be another brother or sister provided for her, so that she wouldn't be an only child. And there were times when she was glad to be an only child, and there were times when she was like, doggone it, you know, I feel all alone because I don't have a brother or I don't have a sister. But the opportunity to have family that you enjoy being around, that you like your family and you understand your family.
Often not any of those.
You know, that's a trick.
Yeah.
I was an only child, and I grew up in an area where there were no children. So I spent a lot of time in solitude, reading, learning to entertain myself, finding interests. And as that has progressed through the years, there are days now where if I didn't talk to my dogs, I wouldn't hear my voice. I just don't talk to people, and that's by choice. I don't need to talk to people. I don't mind the solitude, and if I find that I think I need to talk to somebody, I can get up and go out.
Yeah.
Or I can pick up the phone and call someone
Yeah.
if I choose to. But I like my solitude.
Yeah, I do too. And I think there are people who don't. I won't mention any names, but I do know somebody who absolutely can't stand being alone. And so, you know, that person is out all the time, out doing something, busy, finding something. I'm not going to analyze and say it's because they really need the distraction away from their own reality, but But some people really desperately need to be in the company of others. It's very hard for them to be by themselves. So
I agree with you there. I have never had a problem being with myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can entertain myself a lot of ways, you know, and I find solitude in that, and I enjoy it. Sometimes it's just too noisy out there after I'm trying to be retired. So finding a balance between consistently in conversations with people day in and day out. It's not a 9 to 5. And I thoroughly enjoy the solitude now and not having to pick up the phone, not having to answer the phone when it rings, because it's a choice. You don't have to answer the phone if it rings.
Yeah, getting back to what you were saying, Bob, about choosing to have a life of solitude, like going into a monastery or something, there is a serenity, perhaps, or maybe there's a lot of angst along the way too. But to come to peace with oneself, I think, is what we're really talking about, and it's something you have to be aware of. You have to be able to reach into yourself to realize that's what it's about. You know, we need to have company, but we really need to also to be safe and happy, if that's a reality. Happiness is sort of an elusive thing, I think. But
the poet William Blake, who's a main man for me in many ways, once said, "Foxes have holes, birds have nests, humans friendship." And the time that my solitude was so intense right after COVID and right after losing my wife is I had very little in the way of friendship going on. And I since have found myself first as an advocate for the St. Tim's community and then as an active member of it. And I must say that the friendships I've discovered in a community of faith have been something I was really missing in my life, although I had been a pastor myself. And I don't know statistically how accurate it was, but I read something recently that said that basically a third of retired pastors never wind up relating to a congregation afterwards.
oh my goodness.
And I had trouble here. In fact, I probably went to Unitarian services more than any Christian services because so many of the Christian ones were of the Pentecostal evangelical sort.
I don't even understand what's going on in the Christian world today. Does anybody? Do you understand what's happening?
I have some sad understandings that go back way back in Christian history. You can go back to St. Augustine, who invented the concept of original sin. It's not in the Bible. It's something that he came up with and dealt with his own childhood and youth and mother and all of that. And that whole concept really dominated the theology of much of Western Christianity, that it became a question of sin and guilt and eternal life and all that, and other things that are so crucial to my understanding of Christianity, like loving your neighbor and feeding those who are hungry and being sensitive to strangers and all of that. It got missing in much of, especially Western Christianity.
Yeah.
There are other things that went wrong in Eastern Christianity, but at least they didn't have the curse of Augustine lingering over them so strongly.
Well, it's a very interesting world we're living in, and people are reaching out there and trying to find something, I think, when really, in my judgment, they need to know themselves first of all, and then you can get out there. And you know, water seeks its own level. You'll find other people like yourself, and you've got a mission. It sounds to me like you found something that you really love to do and to be of service.
Yeah,
and a lot of people don't know what that means when you say, I'd like to be of service. You know, I want to help. I want to be there. If you need me, I'm here for you, kind of thing.
And I found a mission where my success is not necessarily dependent on like a literary agent or an in-between person. And that's a huge difference, especially if you have creative instincts, but not necessarily instincts that are inclined to make you sell your product in the ways that used to be sold. They used to be sold.
I have a question, as long as we're on this subject. Do you think that people are losing faith and turning away from the organized churches that we remember from way back? Do you think that it's kind of going in a different direction?
I think that national surveys kind of indicate that.
Yeah,
If they mean anything.
there are two things that have been going on. Let's talk in this country. In other parts of the world, it's different in many ways. But in the last 30, 40 years, the mega churches, the televangelists, and all of those became not dominant, but a really strong presence, while the traditional Methodist, Presbyterian, Lutheran, Episcopalian type churches have been generally all losing membership over the years, and it's not a surprise. Some is partially just there's so many other things to distract people, I made a comment at church a few Sundays back and mentioning, boy, there's maybe 40% of the people here are men, and in most churches it's probably 20%. And one man's comment afterwards was, there was no football on this morning.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, I think there is such a thing as just feeling that you must get up on Sunday morning and you must go to church, and and then that leaves that time there to saying, why am I here?
Yeah.
What am I getting out of this? Am I just going through some exercise because mommy told me I had to?
And frankly, St. Tim's changed because of the persecution by the city. Mm-hmm. It became kind of more generous, more focused on a mission of being helpful to people in need. And it made it much more easy for me to relate to that community. And it's also about the only church in town that relates to the gay community. There's a fairly strong gay contingent there. And
why do people feel they need to be in each other's business all the time? I mean, do you really care if your neighbor is gay? I don't.
No, I don't.
It's bizarre to me how we live in a climate where we've got to find somebody to pick on and think that they're not quite as valuable as we are, or I don't know. It's just
well, part of the problem is the Bible. The Bible was written a long time ago. It's multifaceted, different books, different authors. We don't have any of the original manuscripts, and there's some things in there that are very specifically anti-gay and anti-other things that most people have. I mean, you could find things in the Bible which condemn clothing made of two different types of cloth.
Yeah, it's silliness.
But people who approach the Bible like it's a book of laws can get really messed up in their understanding of what the faith is all about.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting time because we've got a lot of people believing in a kind of religious fervor that looks really strange to me. I can't relate to it. So anyway, I'm just curious because it seems to have taken on a life of its own with the political scene, and that's bizarre.
When I talked about the predominance of the megachurches and the televangelists, there's another movement quite distinctly opposite of that, and that's called, and generally goes under the rubric of progressive Christianity. It's one that rejects the part of the faith that is so literalistic and so forth, and one that emphasizes the part of the faith that is reaching out in love and compassion to others. And that's growing, but the forms in which it's growing, it's hard to measure and hard to see. Yeah. They have a large website. I've had a lot of my stuff published on it and get responses from all over the world. That wasn't available 20, 30 years ago.
Well, we started out this conversation talking about being alone and by choice or otherwise, mm-hmm. and being of service to others. Have you met other people in the process of being attached to the church who are in your similar situation, so that you've got a group of friends now that are...
Somewhat, yeah.
So is that where you primarily look, if you're looking for a community of people, that's where you would go?
Well, that's where I have found more friends than anywhere else here. I'm somewhat different than most on that score, probably, but that's my own reality.
Yeah.
So let's suppose you're a person who is alone, doesn't want to be alone, and you've aged quite a bit. Maybe you don't look like you once did, or you had a lot of. I said maybe. And you want to go find somebody. What would you suggest? Or what would anybody suggest to somebody?
Well, when you say find somebody, what do you mean?
Hook up with somebody, to use, I guess, a current term, or have a boyfriend, girlfriend, somebody you go to dinner
A
with.
romantic
There
relationship?
you go. Yes.
You're looking
That
for
was
it.
an old-fashioned term.
Well,
I think that
But, I have a lot of men friends, and I love my men friends, but I'm not intimate with them,
well,
if you know what I mean.
it doesn't interest you, but
Yeah.
suppose it did. What would you do?
I don't know. I think you're doing all the right things, going out and meeting people and not just depending on some computerized face to stare back at you and say, I'm looking for a man about your height.
I don't get the whole thing at all.
Well, if
Can anybody say anything good for computer dating?
I've done it.
Huh?
I've done it. And
Can you say anything good for it?
No.
So
No,
what do
I
you-
can't. People are just not who they say they are when you meet them
You
in the
sign up. You sign up with an agency and you give them certain facts, and
Oh, not necessarily. There's plenty of dating sites where you just create your own profile and you can swipe left or swipe right, or anybody can contact you. There's dating sites that you have to be liked by somebody before you can communicate with them. There's all types of everything. But
Yeah.
the biggest thing that I've found is people portray themselves as to what they think they want, but not who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And you just don't know who they are until you meet them.
yeah.
And they're not always who they say they are on paper, or on the computer. So
I wouldn't think anybody would put any of their bad habits in their profile.
oh, you'd be surprised.
Really?
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
Fifth of gin a night is my norm.
Everybody does it differently and portrays themselves differently. There are some profiles out there I wouldn't recognize if they weren't holding a fish or antlers. I wouldn't recognize them because there's fish in every picture. It's just what they like to do. They like
Yeah.
to fish, so that's everything about them.
Well, you know what you're getting anyway.
You know what you're getting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If you're into fishing.
for the most part.
Well, you're just going to have to love yourself more, Ray, I think, until the right person comes along.
I've said before, I'm kind of into the little critters running around in the woods, the reptiles and amphibians. And if I put a picture of me holding a rattlesnake or something, I think that I would I
there you
attract
go.
a lot of.
Well, seriously, there you go. What's your favorite thing? You like spiders and snakes and stuff like that. I'll bet there's somebody out there that would go, oh, so do I. Oh, at last I found my soulmate. Because, that's kind of unusual.
I don't think it's unusual at all.
Well, see, but I do. I think it's weird.
I may have told this story before. I was seeing a woman one time, and we came out her front door, and she had this railing, and I think I was putting shoes on or something, and I wound up kneeling by the railing, and there was a spider web there, and in the middle of the spider web was the female spider, and off to the side was the male spider. And male spiders, in most cases, it's very dangerous to go approach the female spider because she'll probably eat him. So what a lot do is they'll sit like at the edge of the web and tweak one of the web.
They're playing a
things.
little song on this.
Yeah, and evidently she's supposed to give signs. Yeah, come on up, and come and see me sometime, or get the hell out of here, or I'll eat you. So anyway, I found that to be kind of interesting, and I pointed it out to this woman, and she didn't even slow down. She just kept going. So could not believe she wasn't interested in that, but she wasn't.
Well,
Wouldn't you be interested in that if I pointed that out?
No.
No. All right.
I'm interested now that you say it, but I think that for the most part, people like me think that spiders are scary. And I don't want one crawling on me,
Well,
And of course, we've all
We're going to have
seen
to
the
indoctrinate you into being interested in spiders.
No.
Jumping spiders. Yes, you could get interested. People keep jumping spiders as pets.
Oh, my goodness.
They actually look intelligent. They have big eyes, and they look at you. jump around, yeah.
Seriously, I think that you've hit on it. You need to put yourself out there as somebody who's arachnophobia, doesn't have arachnophobia.
I don't think it'd be phobia. It would be, what's the opposite
Someone who
of
doesn't
phobia?
have it.
Mania.
Phobia, whatever. Say, I'm all about bugs and snakes.
No, I'm also about snakes.
Yeah. That's an interesting field to some people.
Yes, not here.
Well,
One of the first things I tried to do when I came here was to connect with somebody who was into that. And
there wasn't anybody?
Lon Goddard is the only other
Yeah,
one I
that's
can
right.
think
Yep.
I used to use, before I moved up here, I had 7 different ecosystems in my house. I had a freshwater tank, a saltwater tank. I had Egyptian Euromastics, Australia, what are the Australian lizards? All of a sudden, bearded dragons. And I had a rainforest. And how this started was my daughter was studying the rainforest in 4th grade. And so I built one. And it turned out to be my therapy. I had barking frogs and red-eyed tree toads that laid turquoise eggs.
And how do you get them? You have to send away for them?
I went to the pet store and got them.
I mean, that's weird.
It was fascinating. I loved it.
My frogs came in the mail.
Yep, you could do that.
Goodness.
I have a fascination with ferns. There are so many different types, and they're about the oldest living thing of all. And I love to kind of mix them up together and see how they look well together. And anyway, that's a hobby of mine. And my dogs have been there have been 7 German Shepherds over a lifetime, much of a lifetime. And their enthusiasm, their love, their joy, I have a fairly good-sized property. It's almost 1.5 acres, and they just love to romp around it. And
Well, that's good.
They
yeah.
keep me moving, and so that's a very important part of my current life.
I don't know what I would do without my dogs. I mean, they're just part of my life to the extent that, I talk to them. They're my friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am never lonely.
That's good.
Yeah.
Mine get seasonal adjustment. What is a seasonal something disorder? SAD. When we have one of these storms from the Pacific, they get really restless because they can't be out and romping as much. So seasonal adjustment.
The air becomes supercharged or something that bothers them.
Well, it's just so wet out there.
I think it depends on the animal, too. I mean, I have 2 little dogs, one very senior and one kind of midlife. And all they want to do is sit next to me, whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
They just want to be there. So, good company.
My frogs really don't interact with me at all.
Your frogs don't?
No.
Oh, well, you got the wrong frog.
I should have frogs.
Did you try kissing one?
No.
That's for
No, these are poison dart frogs. You don't touch this.
you don't mess.
I thought maybe you'd get a princess out of it if you
Could be.
kissed. No.
One thing that intrigues me, having had 7 dogs of the same breed, is how different each one was from each other.
Absolutely.
On our property here, there was one, whenever he was let out, he would immediately go to the fences and walk around all of the fences on the property before doing anything else.
Territory.
Check out his parameters.
But I've had 6 other dogs that none of them would. And I had one dog that if we had a new person who would come to the property, they knew that they could entertain them by putting some flagstone or something in their mouth. And within like a minute of someone new being there, they would have flagstone in the mouth, and the people, oh, well, that's fun, that's interesting, and it was it was an attention starter of relationships. Pretty intriguing.
Well, it's like bringing a baby to a party of adults, and suddenly you put the baby on the floor, all eyes go to the baby. I mean, it's just like same thing with a cute dog or a cute cat or a pet. All the energy goes to that because I don't know, they're just.
Now, for me, that would leave more room at the buffet table. I'm not interested in children at all.
At least you're honest about it.
Yes.
Yes, indeedy.
I'm not interested in having grandchildren. I did my stint with my kids. I don't want to do kids again. I'm done with that.
Yeah, the people show you the pictures of the newborn. All newborns look alike.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do. Some are black and some are white and some are this. But other than that, they're all just look the same.
Well, are we running out of time? Where are we on the clock?
We have about 5 minutes.
We have anything wonderful you want to say before we go off the air?
Oh, no.
Oh.
I'm reading poorly. You're right.
Okay.
So,
I was depending on my watch.
Well, I just want to say that I'm happy to meet you. I haven't met you before, and glad to see you again.
Oh, thank you, Shirley.
Yeah, and of course, Ray and I, we're old timers here.
Yes, we are.
He used to be my editor. How come you're not my editor anymore? Or maybe we should.
I seem to have lost the ability to do the things I need to do, and I'm still trying, but I'm gonna give up pretty quickly.
I'm so challenged. I can't do any of that stuff.
I can't do what I used to do, and they changed the program that I used to get music from, and
That's rude.
I just cannot figure out how to get anyway.
Yeah.
It's all complicated.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. I think that having this particular station has been really wonderful for me, and a way to meet other people, like-minded people, and people who are doing their own thing that are very, very different. And when we first started out with this adventure, it was all local people, and now they've developed. I don't even understand how this works, but as part of a network, they can get shows from other places. But I really think that we've got a great community of radio people here in town, and I'm happy that we do.
I agree 100%. This is a volunteer group of some wonderful people, and you can always fit yourself into the radio station with some kind of an interest, whether it's music or discussions or I don't know, maybe somebody will want to talk about reptiles someday, but I haven't given up hope, but I think it's getting slimmer and slimmer.
You just need to advertise more.
Yeah.
You know? Ray is looking for people to come in and talk about lizards and snakes and bugs.
Seriously, if you are looking for something to do out there, this is a wonderful place to start. You can fit into so many different ways, and
you could have a program called The Sleaze and the Slime.
Well, I want to just put in a word for since we've got some animal lovers here, for our local Humane Society, who are really doing a great job. And the thrift store, which supports all of that, is just doing gangbusters. And so I think maybe we could do a whole show on how we live in a disposable society. And we're just, I take a load of clothes to the thrift store and I bring back a load of clothes. We're recycling. And in this community, we don't have a department store. I mean, really clothing stores either. So it fills an enormous gap, and especially in a community where people have limited funds and they can still, get something decent to wear and enjoy the relationships they have with the people down there. They're really nice folks. So if you haven't bought anything at the thrift store, get on down there.
Okay, we're cruising in on the last minute. Shirley, I think you've had your final say. What did you want to say?
I could talk all night. No, I'll be quiet.
Robin?
Oh, well, I just want to say that I've only been here about 3.5 years, and it's a fabulous community. I couldn't be happier. I moved here without knowing a soul in town, and I, in 3.5 years, have great friends.
When I moved here, somebody said it's a college town for retired people.
There you go. Great town.
Bumper music has started. Bob, you have something?
I was just thinking, if this is a college town, why did 80% vote for Trump? But
Oh, I don't know about that. That's a question we could ponder forever.
That is a whole interesting subject right there.
Okay, thanks for tuning in. See you next time.